I'm Jenna Lawson, 32. My parents demanded I sell my grandmother's $1 million house to my sister or be cut off, but they never saw who I'd already sold it to. Kirkland, Washington, spring of 2024. The house on Heron Lane belonged to Grandma Lorraine, a woman whose love and quiet support had been my anchor through every hardship. Her passing had left the family in flux, and the reading of her will was fast approaching. Jenna narrator Ashley Lawson, sister golden child Linda, and Charles Lawson parents manipulative Grandma Lorraine in flashbacks attorney Ramirez brief mention at end. The Heron Lane residence is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with a small garden tucked away in a quiet suburb of Kirkland. The windows overlook familiar sidewalks, lined with maples echoing my childhood summers. The studio apartment I had been renting in Linwood sits 30 minutes away, functional, minimal, and fully self-maintained. The scene opens with my parents cornering me in the living room. "You're selling the house to Ashley, my mother," Linda said, "or you'll be cut off from this family." My father, Charles, nodded, arms folded. They gestured toward the realtor waiting by the door. Every threat and entitlement, every implied punishment, mirrored patterns from my youth. I remembered sitting alone in my room on my 16th birthday while Ashley received a $4,000 laptop and I was denied the $300 debate club fee. I recalled the tuition bills of $25,000 per year for her private school while I scraped together scholarships and jobs to attend a public university. My accomplishments were quietly documented, often overlooked, while Ashley's achievements were celebrated with fanfare. Each instance, minor or significant, felt like a brick in a wall separating me from the recognition I craved. Grandma Lorraine, the only person who ever acknowledged my persistence, had whispered, "You're building something real, Jenna. Never doubt it." Her words now echoed in the empty hallways as I faced the ultimate test of autonomy. I checked my phone, seeing a string of messages. "Did you see Ashley's new project from my mother?" An email from the realtor confirming the appointment blinked on my laptop. The living room felt smaller than it had ever been, constricting with the pressure of expectation and obligation. Each framed certificate on the walls seemed to glare silently at me, evidence of effort ignored. I felt a twinge of hurt, the old ache of invisibility. I had always sought their approval, yet here I stood 48 hours from a meeting that could define my inheritance, acutely aware that recognition might never come from the family whose judgment I once sought. The ultimatum from my parents was clear: sell or be cut off. The stakes were higher than any school exam or early job challenge I had faced. This was not merely about a house, it was about asserting my right to exist independently and to honor Grandma Lorraine's wishes. I drew a deep breath, trying to steady the rush of old memories and immediate pressure. That evening, a call from attorney Ramirez provided a brief reprieve and a glimmer of support. "Everything is in order, Jenna. Just remember, they cannot force your hand." I felt the first threads of resolve tighten within me, a quiet determination forming as the room dimmed and the house grew still. 2008, State University, Washington. I was 17 when I first felt the sting of being overlooked even within my own family. Ashley, my younger sister, was 14, already being guided down a path that seemed meticulously curated by our parents. Every opportunity I earned required tenacity and careful planning, while she received resources and support automatically. My days were long and structured. Morning lectures, afternoon shifts at the campus library, evenings grading papers for a professor willing to pay me for extra work. Between shifts, I studied in cramped dorm corners using a dim desk lamp that flickered constantly, a reminder of the sparse resources I had. Every paycheck, every scholarship I earned felt like a small victory against a tide of inequality. While Ashley's tuition at a private school ran $25,000 a year, my public university relied on grants, work study, and me stretching every dollar. Even small expenses were battles. I remember wanting to join the debate club, needing $300 for fees, only to be denied by my parents. They insisted it wasn't necessary. Meanwhile, a brand new MacBook Pro worth $4,000 arrived for Ashley that same year. Even so, I thrived academically. I poured myself into projects, papers, and late-night study sessions. My Grandma Lorraine was my constant encouragement. Her handwritten notes tucked between textbooks reminded me that diligence and integrity mattered more than applause. "Your perseverance will carry you further than you think, Jenna." Outside of school, the tension at home never diminished. Birthday cards were often forgotten while Ashley's celebrations were elaborate with guests and gifts. Emails and text messages documented my successes quietly, but any praise from my parents was sparse and measured. The dichotomy between my sister's pampered experiences and my own self-reliance was sharp, shaping my early understanding of justice, fairness, and autonomy. I learned to navigate this imbalance pragmatically. I became meticulous in managing money, maintaining contacts, and documenting my accomplishments. Pay stubs, bank records, and correspondence with scholarship committees became artifacts of my existence, proof that I could forge my own path. Each completed task, each earned grade fortified my confidence that someday my efforts would be recognized, even if not by my parents. By the time I graduated at 21, I had accumulated not only academic achievements but resilience and self-awareness. I had also formed a clear sense of what I would accept and what I would not. While I had navigated the inequality in my family, a looming challenge awaited me in the form of inheritance pressures and choices that would test all I had learned. Despite the hardships, there were small moments of connection that sustained me. Visits from Grandma Lorraine, quiet phone calls, and handwritten notes reminded me that my value was not contingent on parental acknowledgement. Her presence instilled a sense of accountability to myself, a standard I could maintain even if no one else did. By my final semester, I felt prepared for the world beyond the campus, ready to transition into the professional realm with clarity, determination, and a sense of purpose shaped by years of silent struggle. By 22, I had moved from the university dorms into a small studio apartment in Linwood, Washington. The rent was $2,700 per month, a cost I managed entirely on my own. I had accepted that independence meant sacrifice, but it also meant freedom to make choices without interference. My days were structured around work, professional development, and slowly building a financial foundation that no one could manipulate. Grandma Lorraine remained a constant source of encouragement. She would drop off small meals, notes of support, or a few personal mementos from the house on Heron Lane. She reminded me that my path was mine alone and that her love was a steady anchor amidst family turbulence. The house itself became a symbol, a physical reminder of the legacy I was working to honor and the control I would eventually have over my life. Ashley's life, by contrast, continued under the protective bubble of parental support. She had recently secured a position at a tech firm in downtown Seattle, courtesy of the family connections and guidance that had been denied to me. Her apartment overlooked Lake Union, furnished with the latest appliances and decor. While I quietly observed her progress, I focused on creating my own version of success, understanding that comparison only distracted from my objectives. Throughout these years, I meticulously saved, documented, and invested. Every paycheck was accounted for, every minor expense scrutinized. I kept detailed records of my bank statements, lease agreements, and personal accomplishments. These artifacts were my proof of diligence and resilience, a counterbalance to the invisibility I often felt within my family. The skills I honed, time management, financial literacy, and strategic planning, would later prove crucial in navigating the inheritance conflict. Despite the challenges, I maintained small, meaningful connections with colleagues and mentors. I attended networking events in Seattle, took on additional responsibilities at work, and consistently sought opportunities for growth. Each successful project, promotion, and bonus reinforced my autonomy. Meanwhile, communication from my parents remained minimal or manipulative, often attempting to guilt me into familial conformity. Text messages and emails reminded me that in their eyes I existed primarily to facilitate Ashley's comfort and advantage. Grandma Lorraine's health began to decline during this period, intensifying the emotional stakes. Her guidance became even more precious, her words imbued with urgency. "Jenna, remember, your worth is not tied to anyone else's approval. Protect what is yours." Her passing left me as the sole inheritor of the Heron Lane house, a responsibility that now carried both symbolic and practical significance. The moment was bittersweet. I mourned her while simultaneously preparing to assert my independence against the weight of family expectations. By the end of this chapter, I had solidified a sense of self-reliance and readiness. The house on Heron Lane, once merely a relic of my childhood, now represented the culmination of years of quiet labor, personal discipline, and the capacity to act decisively. The stage was set for the confrontation with my parents and sister, a test not only of legal ownership but of the personal boundaries I had spent years establishing. Early 2024, Kirkland, Washington. The day of the will reading arrived, and with it the culmination of years of quiet effort and accumulated tension. Grandma Lorraine had passed, leaving me as the sole heir to the Heron Lane house. I walked into the lawyer's office, papers in hand, aware that my parents and Ashley would be waiting to confront me. From the moment I stepped through the door, the pressure was palpable. Linda and Charles stood close together, eyes sharp, expressions rehearsed for effect. Ashley lingered nearby, her face a mix of surprise and hurt, carefully calibrated to evoke guilt. The attorney Ramirez ensured that the legalities were in order. The will clearly stipulated my ownership and full authority over the property. No ambiguity existed, yet my parents seemed determined to erase it through manipulation rather than law. Messages flooded in on my phone both before and during the meeting. Texts from my father: "Jenna, this is not fair to Ashley." From my mother: "You cannot keep this from the family. It belongs to both of you." Emails from extended relatives subtly urged compromise. Even as I read the will aloud, the words asserting my ownership, my sister's gaze weighed on me, her lips trembling in silent accusation. The realtor summoned by my parents in expectation of immediate cooperation stood at the ready. Contracts were prepared, paperwork waiting, a broker's signature line anticipated. My parents' ultimatum was clear: sell now, split the proceeds, or be cast out. Every childhood slight, the debate fee denial, the overlooked graduations, the luxurious gifts for Ashley resurfaced, colliding with the immediacy of the present. Yet beneath the tension, I remained calm. Months prior, I had anticipated this confrontation. Derek Wu, a former classmate and now the CEO of the tech firm where Ashley worked, had approached me discreetly, offering to purchase the property. The transaction was legal, confidential, and in motion. As the room debated, threatened, and implored, I held the knowledge that I controlled the narrative. I handed the attorney an envelope containing confirmation of the sale. "The house has already been sold," I stated, evenly, voice steady. "The buyer is Mr. Derek Wu, and the transfer is complete." The room froze. Linda's hand trembled, Charles' jaw tightened, Ashley's eyes widened in shock. The broker, expecting immediate signatures, looked helpless, papers scattered on the table like fallen leaves. Emotionally, I experienced a mixture of relief and vindication. The pattern of neglect, manipulation, and entitlement that had defined my family dynamic for decades culminated here, and finally I held authority over my own life. The artifacts, the will contracts, messages, bank statements, all validated my actions. No one could dispute the legality or the planning behind the move. Grandma Lorraine's voice resonated in my memory. "Protect what is yours, Jenna." Quietly, without compromise. I had followed her guidance precisely. The confrontation intense, though it was confirmed that years of self-reliance and diligence had been worth the effort. I watched as my family processed the reality, their expectations shattered, their attempts to control me failing in the face of evidence and foresight. By the end of the meeting, I felt an unexpected calm. The house, the culmination of inheritance and strategy, was no longer a source of conflict but a testament to my capacity for careful, decisive action. I left the office, the spring air of Kirkland cooling my skin, carrying the weight of autonomy with a sense of empowerment that was at once exhilarating and sobering. Spring 2024, Seattle. After the confrontation over the Heron Lane house, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. With attorney Ramirez guiding each step, I finalized the sale to Derek Wu, ensuring every detail was airtight and confidential. The wire transfer confirmed ownership and cleared all obligations I might have faced if my parents had attempted to challenge the process. For the first time in years, I felt truly independent financially, emotionally, and legally. I moved into a modest apartment downtown, leaving behind my studio in Linwood. The lease was signed, my personal belongings neatly arranged, and the small touches I had added made it feel like a home. I carried with me only what mattered, a few personal mementos from Grandma Lorraine's stacks of carefully filed documents, and the sense that my decisions now belonged to me alone. Messages from my parents stopped almost immediately. Ashley sent a few hesitant texts, attempts at reconciliation veiled in gentle reminders of family loyalty and invitations to lunch, but I chose silence. The boundaries I had struggled to establish were finally unshakable. Each email I filed, each phone call I ignored reinforced the control I had worked so long to claim. Even the simplest gestures, paying bills on time, preparing meals for myself, managing my own schedule, felt like acts of quiet victory. I found that independence came with both liberation and solitude. Nights were quieter, and I felt the absence of family in the apartment's corners, yet the emptiness was accompanied by clarity. There was no one to second-guess my choices or to measure my worth against another. The artifacts I had accumulated, contracts, bank statements, lease agreements, messages with attorney Ramirez, provided reassurance that I had acted wisely and securely. Work became a refuge and a proving ground. I approached each task with renewed focus, confident that my success was solely my own. I could negotiate, plan, and execute without the lingering pressure of parental oversight. The hours spent building independence in small incremental steps over the past decade had culminated in this space where autonomy was not only a possibility but a reality. Each evening, I would walk through the streets near my apartment, observing the city in motion. The routines of others, the hum of traffic, the distant laughter from cafes, all of it reminded me that life could proceed unencumbered by expectations I did not choose to honor. Grandma Lorraine's wisdom echoed in these quiet moments: protect what is yours, act with foresight, and claim the life you have earned. By the time the sun dipped behind the skyline, casting long shadows across the sidewalks, I realized I was no longer just surviving. I was thriving within boundaries I had defined for myself. Independence was not a single act, but a series of decisions, each reinforcing the last. And in that calm, deliberate space, I finally felt the weight of my choices settling into the solid ground of control. Summer 2024, Seattle. The city had begun to hum with life after spring rains, and I moved through my routines with a sense of quiet purpose. At work, I was recognized for the long hours and careful attention I had devoted to projects over the years. The promotion to senior audit manager arrived without fanfare, accompanied by a bonus of $15,000. It wasn't the money that mattered most, it was the acknowledgement of my expertise, my dedication, and the tangible confirmation that my decisions and efforts had led me to this point. Derek Wu reached out with a short note of gratitude, a small gesture acknowledging the discreet arrangement of the Heron Lane house sale. He respected the confidentiality of the transaction, and I appreciated that no one outside the necessary parties had been disturbed by the outcome. This was the essence of the quiet justice. I had sought decisive action that required no spectacle, no public confrontation, only careful, lawful steps taken in advance. My apartment reflected this newfound stability. The small space in downtown Seattle was functional but welcoming, decorated with modest personal touches, framed photographs of Grandma Lorraine, a few plants, and books stacked in neat piles. It was a physical manifestation of the independence I had carved for myself, a daily reminder that I controlled my surroundings, my schedule, and my finances. I invested in things that brought me comfort and efficiency, not ostentation, each purchase deliberate, reflecting both practicality and self-respect. Work routines became structured, predictable, and yet challenging in the right ways. I led audits, coordinated teams, and represented clients with a professionalism that was recognized by colleagues and superiors alike. Each successful meeting, each completed project added to a growing sense of competence and autonomy. The bonus and promotion were milestones, markers of progress, but the real satisfaction lay in the mastery of my craft and the ability to navigate complex situations without interference from those who had once sought to manipulate or control me. Family contact remained minimal. Ashley sent a few hesitant messages asking about lunch or work, which I read but did not immediately respond to. My parents' attempts to reach me had dwindled to near silence, the earlier pressure and ultimatum replaced by an unspoken acknowledgement of my independence. The emotional weight of these interactions, or lack thereof, was surprisingly light. The absence of control from others allowed me to make choices grounded in my values and priorities. Social connections outside the family flourished quietly. Colleagues, mentors, and friends became part of a support network based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Dinner invitations, networking events, and casual meetups filled the gaps that had previously been occupied by the complex and often painful dynamics at home. These interactions reinforced a sense of agency. My life was directed by my decisions, not by the expectations or demands of others. Even in solitude, I experienced a profound sense of empowerment. Evening walks along city streets, stopping at small cafes, or pausing to watch the sunset over Lake Union became rituals of reflection. I could consider my progress plan for the future and remember Grandma Lorraine's lessons about diligence, foresight, and self-worth. Each step along the pavement was a step away from the shadows of neglect and toward a life fully my own. By late summer, the contours of a new rhythm had emerged. Independence, stability, and achievement coexisted in a delicate but satisfying balance. The artifacts of my past contracts, correspondence, bank statements remained neatly archived symbols of a careful, deliberate path. They reminded me that every challenge overcome, every boundary asserted had contributed to a life that was both secure and authentic. For the first time, I could navigate each day with confidence that my choices were my own and that my efforts were recognized both legally and morally. Fall 2024, Bellevue, Washington. The family gathering had been planned long before I decided to assert my independence, yet the timing now carried a quiet tension. Ashley was preparing for her upcoming wedding, and invitations had been extended to me as her older sister. I accepted, aware that the event would be more than a celebration. It would be the first real opportunity for my parents and extended family to confront the outcomes I had quietly established over the previous months. The gathering was held in a well-appointed restaurant overlooking the lake. Guests trickled in, and the atmosphere was polite, almost ceremonial. My parents, Linda and Charles, maintained composed expressions, but the strain beneath their smiles was palpable. Ashley's excitement was evident, though there was a subtle undercurrent of disappointment whenever her eyes met mine. I kept my demeanor calm, deliberate, aware that the control I had earned needed only to be maintained through presence and poise rather than verbal confrontation. Conversations began lightly, family news, upcoming events, but the undercurrent of expectation was unmistakable. At one point, an aunt casually asked, "So Jenna, how did the sale of the Heron Lane house go?" The question was neutral on the surface, but the scrutiny beneath it was sharp. I replied evenly, "Everything is handled legally and the transfer is complete." The room stiffened. My parents exchanged a glance. Ashley's lips parted slightly, eyes widening with surprise. No one dared to press further. The artifacts, the sale contract, the wire transfer confirmation, Attorney Ramirez's assurances were not physically displayed, but their certainty radiated from me. The emotional journey through this gathering was complex. Relief, pride, and a sense of finality mingled with traces of residual tension. I had anticipated attempts at persuasion, perhaps emotional appeals or subtle manipulation, yet each intervention fell flat against the evidence I held and the boundaries I had established. My independence was now unquestionable, the quiet justice I had sought realized through preparation, foresight, and meticulous execution. Ashley attempted to reach me in small ways, touching my arm during introductions, murmuring casual questions about work, but I responded with neutrality. Each interaction reinforced the boundary. Respect for my autonomy was non-negotiable. My parents remained poised, their attempts at influence muted by the reality of the legal and financial clarity I had established months prior. Throughout the evening, I observed the small signals that indicated the shift in family dynamics. Subtle glances of acknowledgement, tentative smiles, and hesitant questions indicated that my position had been accepted, even if reluctantly. The quiet authority I had cultivated through independent action was evident, and the room itself seemed to recognize it. No argument, no dramatic confrontation was necessary. The documentation, foresight, and firm stance created a presence that demanded recognition. In private moments, I reflected on the significance of this victory. Years of meticulous planning, self-reliance, and emotional regulation had culminated here. I had transformed what could have been a conflict-laden situation into a space of quiet empowerment. Every artifact I had preserved, from messages to contracts, had served its purpose. Each decision, though sometimes lonely or difficult, was validated by the outcome. My autonomy was intact, my boundaries respected, and my integrity upheld. As the evening wound down, I excused myself quietly. Standing near the window overlooking the lake, I allowed myself a brief private smile. The city lights shimmered on the water, reflecting the clarity and peace I had worked so long to achieve. The confrontation had occurred, but it had been rendered unnecessary through preparedness, calm, and quiet decisiveness. Family expectations, once a source of pressure and anxiety, now moved around me, their influence diminished. Walking out of the restaurant, I felt the full weight of control and self-determination. The artifacts, the planning, the years of building independence all had led to this point. I left the gathering with the sense that the chapter of my life defined by parental manipulation and pressure was conclusively closed. The quiet justice I had sought was no longer abstract. It existed in the choices I had made, the legal and financial clarity I had secured, and the calm authority with which I now navigated familial spaces. For the first time, I felt not just relief, but the satisfaction of complete agency over my life and decisions. Early 2025, Seattle, Washington. The city hummed with the quiet rhythm of daily life, and I found myself in a small cafe near Capitol Hill sipping coffee and reflecting on the past year. The weight of months spent asserting independence, managing legal matters, and navigating family pressure had settled into a steady, calm presence. For the first time, I could breathe without anticipation of conflict, without feeling my worth measured against someone else's expectations. The Heron Lane house, now under Derek Wu's ownership, was no longer a source of stress or confrontation. The transaction had been seamless, legally sound, and discreet. It stood as both a tangible and symbolic representation of the agency I had cultivated over years of careful effort. I could revisit the memories of that home, the summers spent with Grandma Lorraine, the quiet moments in her garden without the anxiety that had previously accompanied them. Each artifact, contracts, emails, bank statements, served as reminders of foresight and diligence, not as tools for ongoing conflict. Daily routines had become structured yet flexible. At work, I continued to lead projects with authority and clarity, receiving acknowledgement from colleagues and superiors. The $15,000 bonus and my promotion to senior audit manager were markers of progress, but the true measure of success was the knowledge that my accomplishments were solely the result of my own efforts. Each completed audit meeting or presentation reinforced the principles I had internalized: preparation, integrity, and measured assertiveness. My relationships had shifted naturally. Connections outside my family, mentors, colleagues, friends formed a network built on respect and reciprocity. I no longer relied on familial approval for validation. Ashley and my parents had become peripheral, their influence diminished by time, circumstance, and the quiet assertion of my autonomy. When I encountered messages from them, I responded selectively, guided by clarity and personal boundaries. The emotional landscape, once fraught with tension and manipulation, had settled into calm recognition. I was no longer beholden to anyone's expectations. Even in solitude, I found purpose and peace. The rituals I established, morning walks, journaling, tending to small plants in my apartment, reinforced a sense of control and presence. The memory of Grandma Lorraine, her guidance, and her affirmations remained central. Your worth is determined by your actions, Jenna, not by the whims of others. I carried this wisdom into each decision, whether professional or personal, and allowed it to shape a life aligned with my values. The reflection extended beyond immediate accomplishments. I considered the trajectory of my independence, from a teenager denied participation in a debate club through years of scholarship and self-reliance to the management of legal matters and financial assets. Each phase, each struggle had contributed to a foundation of competence and self-respect. There was no need for external validation. The quiet acknowledgement of my own capabilities was sufficient. In moments of quiet, I revisited the artifacts that had documented this journey. Bank statements, contracts, and correspondence served as a record not merely of transactions but of strategy, discipline, and foresight. The sale of Heron Lane, the management of finances, the careful maintenance of professional reputation, all these elements intertwined to create a sense of completion. They were proof that deliberate, informed action could yield outcomes both fair and satisfying without spectacle or drama. The emotional closure was equally profound. Grief for Grandma Lorraine remained softened by gratitude for her guidance and the foundation she had provided. The anger and frustration once tied to my parents' manipulation had dissipated, replaced by clarity and calm. I had honored my own efforts, protected what was rightfully mine, and established boundaries that ensured future interactions would be measured and respectful. As I closed my journal, I recognized the broader lesson embedded in this year-long arc: autonomy, diligence, and thoughtful action yield lasting empowerment. Quiet justice is neither loud nor vengeful. It is deliberate, lawful, and self-affirming. The life I now navigated was a testament to preparation, foresight, and the courage to claim what had always been rightfully mine. I left the cafe carrying the sense of finality and peace that comes with having established self-directed agency. The streets of Seattle, the light on the water, and the hum of the city served as a backdrop to a life fully in my control. I had achieved the independence, recognition, and emotional clarity I had sought, guided by the lessons of the past and the enduring wisdom of those who had truly seen me for who I am. The past year had been a journey of quiet strength, careful planning, and unwavering self-reliance. Each challenge, from early neglect and inequality to the pressure of family expectations, was met with deliberate, measured action. By the time the Heron Lane House transaction was finalized, I had transformed obstacles into evidence of resilience, autonomy, and competence. The quiet justice I achieved did not require confrontation. It relied on foresight, legality, and moral clarity. I learned that independence is earned through consistent effort, attention to detail, and the courage to set boundaries. Recognition from others is fleeting, but acknowledgement of one's own worth is enduring. By managing financial, legal, and emotional stakes with care, I protected not only assets but personal integrity, ensuring that the life I built was fully my own. For anyone facing similar pressures, whether from family, colleagues, or societal expectations, the lesson is clear: deliberate action, careful planning, and maintenance of personal boundaries cultivate both security and respect. Empowerment comes quietly through the accumulation of choices that honor your values and foresight. Take a moment to reflect on your own boundaries and autonomy. Consider how preparation and deliberate action can shift circumstances in your favor, often without the need for spectacle or confrontation. The life you claim for yourself, built steadily and thoughtfully, is the life you will inhabit with confidence and peace.